Should you be stacking silver dimes? Well, I sure am, and silver dimes like these have a lot going for them as a silver bullion investment. In fact, silver dimes are one of my absolute favorite forms of silver, and in this video I'm going to cover 4 reasons why these silver coins are essential for anyone stacking silver. So let's get to it. Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here, and before we get into why I love stacking these silver dimes so much, I do just want to take a moment to say a quick thank you to you for tuning into this video. If you love stacking silver, then please give this video a big thumbs up and click that like button below, and while you're at it, why not subscribe to my channel and click that bell notification icon as well so that you can see more great videos about gold, silver, and precious metals in the future. Alright, so 90% US silver dimes, known by some as junk silver dimes, by others as constitutional silver dimes, but whatever you call them, they are awesome coins. Now let's talk about some of the basics in regards to silver dimes real quick. So with 90% US junk silver dimes, we're really talking about 3 different types of coins here. We've got the barber dime here on the left, and those were minted from 1892 to 1916. In the middle here, we've got the mercury dime, minted from 1916 to 1945. And then this dime on the right here, the Roosevelt dime, probably looks familiar to everybody because it's the same pattern of dime that we currently mint today. But the difference is that from 1946 to 1964, these Roosevelt dimes were composed of 90% silver, whereas the ones that are minted 1965 and later, continuing today, are clad coins, so those have a copper core surrounded by a nickel jacket. So only the coins before 1964 are actually made of silver. And in today's video, I want to tell you 4 very compelling reasons to have these silver coins as part of your stack. These are really one of my favorite ways to get my hands on physical silver. One of the primary reasons that I really love these things is they're not making them anymore. You know, it's a limited supply. They haven't made these coins in over 50 years. Now, initially, there was a pretty big supply of these coins. In fact, almost 10 billion silver dimes were minted from 1892 to 1964. And if you want the specific numbers, I'll go ahead and give them to you. The barber dimes that we have over here, there were 504,515,051 of those minted from 1892 to 1916. The mercury dimes, there were 2,676,523,880 of those minted. And then the Roosevelt dimes, even more so, there were 6,595,617,633 of those minted. So to say that there were a lot of silver dimes minted is maybe an understatement. But here's the thing. It's been 50 years since they stopped making these things. And all of the 10 billion or so that were minted originally, they're not all around anymore. There was an article written, is published on the PCGS website, so that's the Professional Coin Grading Service. There's an article from their website called After the Melts, What's Left in Silver Coins. And this was originally published January 1st, 2001, so it's been a while. It's been over 20 years since this was written, but a lot of what's in this article still holds true today. And I'll go ahead and I will put a link down in the description for anybody who would like to read the full article. It's kind of interesting, but there are some portions in particular that are kind of germane to silver dimes. So let me go ahead and read a little bit of this article to you. It starts off, normally the value of a coin is based on how many were made. In years to come, however, the value of silver United States coins may hinge to a greater extent on how many were lost. Millions have been melted for the recapture of their metal, and the impact on coin collecting, while still not fully gauged, is likely to be great as time goes by. Most of the melting took place in 1979 and 1980, when silver bullion soared to an all-time high of $50 an ounce. At that point, common date silver coins were worth far more as metal than as money or collectibles. Even scarcer items could be melted at a profit. There is, of course, no real way of determining with precision the number of coins from each year that were melted. The dealers who bought the coins and the processors who melted them were far too busy with the big picture, the overall dynamics of the process, to find time for small considerations such as detailed record keeping. And there's a few other things I'm going to read to you guys from this article, but I just want to comment on that first bit real quick. A lot of these coins were melted down. As you read there, in 1979 and 1980, the price of silver spiked up to $50. And you've got to keep in mind that $50 in 1980 was a lot more than $50 today. So if you adjust for inflation, and even just using the CPI, so the official government numbers, and I think it's fair to say that inflation probably since 1980 is a little higher than the CPI will state, but let's say we just use the official numbers, that puts the 1980 silver price at over $150 in today's dollars. So you can imagine today if silver spiked up to $150, if people had some of these old silver coins sitting around in their, in their basement or in a coffee can or something, they might run out and get them melted down. And in 1980, probably a lot of people actually still had some old change from 1964. So a lot of coins were melted down. We'll probably never know exactly how many were lost to the refiners, but it was, I'm sure, a significant number. And when you hear some of the quotes from some of the dealers that I'll read to you here in just a moment from that article, you'll understand exactly how many of these may have been lost. Now, there's still plenty of junk silver out there. It's not like it's a uncommon thing. When I started stacking, this was really one of the more common ways to pick up silver, and the premiums on this stuff were super low. But if you've been watching my videos lately, you know that that's actually kind of changing a little bit, and there is sort of a shortage, I think, developing in junk silver. I did a video a couple weeks ago called Is There a Shortage in Junk Silver? And I talked about how a lot of the online dealers are kind of running out of stock in this stuff, and there's not a tremendous amount of it available. If you go and you look at the online dealer websites these days, you'll notice that they have a lot more listings for 90% US silver coins that are out of stock than the ones they actually have in stock. And as soon as they get them, they typically will sell out in a short order. And the premiums on junk silver also have been going up quite a bit. Right now, if you go and you look around at the online dealers, you're going to be paying somewhere between $29 and $30 an ounce for silver, and that's with the spot price being in the $22 range. So 10 years ago, that was kind of unheard of. You could typically pick this stuff up real close to spot. As time has gone by, the premiums have been rising, and I expect that is going to continue, especially if we see a big move up in the price of silver somewhere along the line. I think that this stuff is really going to become more of a premium product rather than just kind of like a simple bullion investment. And that's why I like to get this stuff anytime I can find it anywhere close to spot. Most of the dimes you see here I stacked close to spot years ago. But still, if I see the opportunity to pick any up at a good price, I like to add them to the stack because, like I said, they're not making this stuff anymore. And anytime you have your hands on a commodity that is in demand and the supply is only shrinking, then you're in a very good position because as supply shrinks and demand moves up, the price will move up as well. That is just how supply and demand works. Now, some of these coins, the barber dimes especially, there were only, 500 million or so of those minted. So if you ever get your hands on these, that's definitely worth hanging on to. Now, some barber dimes, if you get some really nice looking ones, you can see this one's kind of worn. It's almost slick, really. You probably don't want to throw that in with your other dimes because a nice barber dime could have some numismatic premium attached to it. So if you're stacking silver dimes and you find some that don't look like this but look much nicer, you probably want to hang on to those and maybe sell them separately. You'll probably get a numismatic premium. Mercury dimes, less so. These things are fairly common. These are really one of my favorite silver dimes, actually, because the difference between a Mercury dime and a Roosevelt dime is when you look at a Roosevelt dime, you don't know right off the bat that it's made of silver because there's all these clad coins that have been minted since then. Billions and billions of them. And you got to do the little edge check. You got to look at the edge here and make sure there's no copper showing and it's just silver. But a Mercury dime, you know right off the bat this thing is made of silver because there were no clad Mercury dimes ever minted. So Mercury dimes really are one of my favorites because they're a little more common than the barbers. Typically when you get Mercury dimes, they're going to be in a little bit better shape than the barbers. Like I mentioned, Barber dimes that are consigned to the junk silver category typically have a fair amount of wear on them, whereas the Mercuries still look pretty good. But you can differentiate them from clad coinage very easily because there are no clad Mercury dimes. I'm going to read to you guys some quotes from Jim Carr. So he's a coin dealer from New Hampshire, and this is also from this article from PCGS. But here's a quote for him about dimes. Take Roosevelt dimes, for example. The 1949 S and the 1955 P, D, and S are probably the commonest coins in the series today in circulated condition, whereas before the melts, they were the scarcest. Being worth a premium, they were saved. In circulated condition, the new key may be the 1946 D or something like that, something where almost every piece ended up being melted. When silver hit $50 an ounce, I would say that 98% of the silver coins in existence were committed to the smelting houses, he confided. If the price had been maintained, most everything would have been lost. Fortunately, he added, the refiners had a 2 or 3 month backlog, and as silver dropped in value, they withdrew a lot of the coins. Even so, it's scary just thinking of what might have happened. So wow, 98% by this one dealer's estimation of US 90% junk silver coins were consigned to smelters. But that spike up to $50 back in 1980 didn't last for that long. It was kind of a temporary phenomenon. And all of those coins didn't get melted because basically they just couldn't melt the things fast enough. So we didn't lose 98% of our US junk silver. And that, the stacker in me and the coin enthusiast and the lover of hard money and 90% constitutional silver, that really would be a tragedy to me if 98% of those coins were lost. So I'm glad that didn't happen. I'm glad the price of silver came back down and we can still get our hands on these today. But you got to remember that this was written back in 2001, and since then, in 2011, we had another spike up to $50. Now, it's not quite the $50 of 1980, like I mentioned, because you got to kind of adjust for inflation. But still, I'm sure that we lost even more of these coins in 2011 when everybody was going nuts over the price of gold and silver. I mean, if you remember that time 10 years ago driving around, there were We Buy Gold and We Buy Silver shops popping up all over the place. And trust me, when you drop off junk silver coins to, that little storefront, they're not going through these and cataloging them and keeping them as, historical artifacts. They're sending them right to the smelter because they're just trying to make a quick buck off of the rise in the price of silver, and they're basically just profiting from the spread between whatever they pay the seller and what they can get from the refiner for it. So I'm sure we lost more of these coins in 2011. So to me, that is a very compelling reason to pick up some silver dimes, just the fact that there aren't that many of them left. Now, the second reason that I really like silver dimes is because they're extremely recognizable. I mean, they're U.S. silver coins. They're legal tender coins. They were used in this country for more than half a century as circulating coinage, as hard money, as real money. People sort of just recognize them, I think. They're obviously dimes, They have the U.S. Legal tender wording on them. And a Mercury dime especially is very recognizable as silver. Like I said, there is no clad equivalent. And I think a lot of people have seen these, even people who aren't necessarily silver stackers or silver enthusiasts. I think I can remember my grandfather having just a box of old coins, and mixed in there were some Mercury dimes. And, also the Roosevelt dime. Now, you might have a hard time, educating people on the difference between a clad coin and a silver coin. That's a possibility. But these are very recognizable because they're in circulation today. Not the silver variety, of course, the clad coinage, but, there's no mistaking these for anything but U.S. coinage. And then when you do that little edge check, it's pretty clear that these are made of silver and not copper. So I like how recognizable silver dimes are. I think that they're a highly liquid form of silver. If you walk into any coin shop anywhere and you have some silver dimes, the dealer is going to recognize what you have. There's going to be no question. And the same goes for if you're selling to other stackers, not from some small mint or anything. Everybody knows what junk silver dimes are, so they're very recognizable. And if it ever comes down to some kind of a barter situation, SHTF, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if it does, I would say my number one coin that I would want to have is Mercury dimes. That's because they are recognizable, but also, and this kind of leads us into the third compelling reason for owning junk silver dimes, is that they're very divisible. It's a small coin. It's not that much silver. And so you don't have to take your American Silver Eagle, and cut it in half to make change. you can just use some dimes. They're an extremely affordable form of fractional silver. Usually, if you go out and you buy like a 1/10 ounce silver round or something like that, you're going to pay some crazy premium over the spot price. And even though premiums on junk silver have gone up recently and they're higher than they traditionally have been, they're still a lot lower than buying some of those fractional silver pieces, the 0.999 1/10 or 1/4 ounce rounds, what have you. Silver dimes are still a much more affordable and also a much more recognizable form of fractional silver. Now, a cool thing about dimes, and you can't really do this with the other junk silver, with the quarters and the halves, but you can take 14 of these, and that equals 1 troy ounce of pure silver. So it weighs a little bit more than 1 ounce because there's some copper in there too. Remember, these are 90% silver coins, and that's because they were circulated, and 90% silver and 10% copper is a little more durable for circulation than pure silver. But it's real easy to get 1 troy ounce of silver with these. It's $1.40. So you can just take 14 silver dimes and there's 1 troy ounce of silver. Now, you can't do that, obviously, with the quarters and the half dollars because there's no way you can add those up to equal $1.40. So that's one of the reasons that I really like silver dimes, even more so than quarters and half dollars, because it's fairly straightforward, fairly simple to get yourself 1 troy ounce of silver. And it's easy to, make change or get any small amount of silver you want because they're so fractional and so divisible. And the fourth compelling reason to add some silver dimes to your stack, it's something I already mentioned in this video, but it's that these are legal tender US coins. So that gives you a number of advantages as a stacker. One of the big things is that, depending on where you live, your region, your municipality, your state, whatever, legal tender coins are going to be treated differently than generic bullion for the purposes of taxes. For example, in some states, you might need to pay sales tax on generic bullion, especially if you're buying a small quantity of it. But if you're buying silver dimes, they're U.S. legal tender, so they're not going to charge you sales tax on those. For anybody who's looking to pick up small amounts of silver, and you don't want to be troubled with things like sales tax, silver dimes are a great way to go. Back when I first started stacking, I didn't have a lot of money to put into silver, but one of the things I would do is I had a local coin shop near me at the time, and I would drive by with like 10, 20 bucks, and I would just see how many silver dimes I could pick up for the amount of cash I had on me. If I hadn't spent that cash on silver dimes, I'm sure I would have blown it on something else, lunch or some coffee or whatever. But because I went ahead and just bought small quantities of silver dimes from my local coin shop, and they were very cool for doing that, any local coin shop that'll take the time to sell you a dime or two, like $5 worth of silver, those are nice guys. I still have that money today, and I have it in a much better form than some fiat Federal Reserve notes. I've got it in hard money, some real silver, and it's actually still U.S. currency, still legal tenders. So I think that was a good trade. Another reason that being legal tender coins is advantageous for stackers is it sort of discourages counterfeiters. Counterfeiters, I think, would much rather take the risk of making fake, say, generic 1 ounce rounds or silver bars or something that doesn't involve counterfeiting U.S. currency, because if you make a fake silver bar, well, that's fraud, what have you. It's definitely a crime, especially if you're trying to peddle it as real silver. But it's a much bigger deal legally to create counterfeit U.S. coinage. So unless you want the Treasury Department coming after you and the Secret Service, the guys who enforce counterfeiting laws, it's probably best for counterfeiters to stay away from these coins. So you can rest assured that the vast majority of silver dimes you encounter out there are legitimate. They're real silver coins. Now, one thing you might want to watch out for, and this doesn't really apply to silver stackers, but if you're a coin collector or something like that too, you might want to scrutinize any kind of key date coins that you find a little more strictly for counterfeit, because although I don't think that counterfeiters would bother making a fake junk silver dime, something that doesn't really carry any premium over the spot price, because after all, this is an extremely small coin. It would be a lot of trouble to counterfeit these, I would expect. Counterfeiters might take the time to counterfeit, say, like a key date coin that has a high numismatic premium. So just scrutinize those a little bit more carefully than you would your junk silver dimes, I would say. The legal tender status of coins does kind of give them some protection against counterfeiting. Not to say that nobody's ever made a fake silver dime, but it's a lot less likely than, say, with like a generic round or a generic bar. So that's it, everybody. 4 reasons why I love to stack these US 90% constitutional silver dimes. If you guys would like to find out more about that junk silver shortage I mentioned earlier, then check out this video I made about that right here. Thank you all very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I will catch you next time. Smart Silver Stacker, out.